What is the Nigerian parenting style? Have you ever wondered, or why it matters? Every parent has a style, and every culture also tends to have a common tradition and style. You have heard about, the Asian parenting style, that's the tiger mom, or the French parenting style, that's bringing up baby. Well, when it comes to Africa or Nigerian parenting style, there are definitely some unique characteristics. What does the Nigerian parent want from their child? Now, that's a question for you to ponder on. And how does the Nigerian parent get what they want from their child? What do you think? And how does these styles affect the children? How do these styles affect the children? Now, that's another question. Anyway, we have with us Samson Oloyede. And then we're going to be having this conversation together. Seriously, I really need to mention that this conversation came up as a result of a particular story that's trending on social media, where we saw the story of a woman whose son called up to say he's not an atheist, and then the mom says no problem, it's fine. The mom gets him to relocate to the country, and that was the end. The mom ensured that he didn't get back to whatever country, Italy or whatever country he was coming from, and then he graduated from
Kaduna Polytechnic.
Yes,
and had his church wedding too.
He's coming up very soon.
Well, like someone wanted to be an atheist, now it's having a church marriage.
Exactly. And then I think some people have been, commenting on that, saying things like, some are saying things like maybe you shouldn't allow your children, when your children get out of the country, there's a possibility that they come back as masquerades, or they come back different from what they were before they went, and all of that. So today, first I'd like you to react to that story of that woman who is a deacon in a church, and then his son calls her up to say, you know what, mom, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in that God thing. I'm not an atheist.
Well, it's a typical reaction that you get from African parents.
Okay.
And it must be said that the way the mother, addressed the issue is not conventional. Oftentimes when African mothers get to hear that, especially someone who is a deaconess in church, there's always the tendency to flare up and react. But keeping her cool, just, come home for holidays. And then the next thing, he comes home, probably tears up the passports and, has to change schools and all of that. So she handled it pretty well. But, as you said, folks have reacted both for and against the reaction of the mother. And you have to realize that it all boils down to the notion of freedom, the concept of freedom, which is ambiguous on its own. As much as the mother thinks she's in the right place to train up a child the way the child should go, there's also the place of the child training himself or herself at some point. Yorubas have the adage that once a child is trained, the child also has to train himself or herself to become that individual. Religion, as we've known it to be over time, is personal. It's your personal relationship with God. But we also know quite well that oftentimes we are born into a particular religious faith. So we tend to practice the faith of our parents until probably we are old enough
to make decisions.
So the question will then boil down to the child in question: was he old enough to make his own decision? If he was above 18 or 21, which most countries, regardless of country, by 21 you're an adult. If he was old enough to make that decision, then you also want to question why force him to change back. But again, we are people of the African culture and all of that. So you look at it and you realize that you can make arguments for and against. There's the place of environment having a fundamental role or impact in how a child is developed.
Perception, worldview, and
all of that. That's where your nature and nurture comes in. So now, oftentimes, what people, the preconceived notion is that if you want your child to come up well or come out well, probably train within the African setting. Because when you go over there, there's a tendency for you either to be an atheist or, homosexual or what have you, and all of that.
And everything.
Basically. But at the end of the day, as I said, it still boils down to notion of freedom, the concept of freedom, that folks should have the right to choose or determine who they want to be with, what they believe in, and all of that.
I quite agree with you when you say folks should have the freedom to choose, because personally, I had to put out, okay, I'm a Christian and I'm a beautiful one. I mean, I love my religion and all that. So and based on that, I would like my children, matter of fact, before I got married, I've been praying for them. You will serve the Lord. You will know the Lord Jesus Christ. You understand? But then when I saw that story, I had to put away that Christian, like, okay, I'm a child of God, right? But put it aside. Is this child an adult? If this child is an adult, and he decided to make a decision for himself, how then should you address it as a mother? Should you say, because this is your own religion, you then impose it on a child? Are you imposing at that point?
But then again, sorry, before Samson give your reaction, then again, I looked at it from this perspective. I wouldn't see it as imposing because the child went abroad as an adult, of course, maybe. But he had
I'm
to
generalizing now.
Yeah, okay. Then he had to come back and finish from Kaduna Polytechnic, and
he was forced to come back.
Okay, correct.
No, he
Or
was
deceived.
tricked.
He was deceived to come back.
And had to finish from Kaduna Polytechnic, and he's having his church wedding very soon. Now, as an adult, there are still people in Nigeria, in the African setting, who are still atheists, and they still believe in God. So, don't you think maybe he was pressured into saying, maybe he has had friends around him saying, okay, we don't believe in God here, or we don't this, and he started thinking like that. Because if it was really based on choice and he wanted to stand on his choice, even if you take him to the deepest part of Africa, he could still choose to stand by what he had already chosen. So don't you see
But the
from that?
thing is, okay, you go ahead.
Like I mentioned earlier, environment also has a role to play. And you've mentioned the place of probably peer pressure, you know, influencing his decision and all of that. Especially since he was abroad, he was in Italy. Now the story, we didn't get the age of the child, of the protagonist in this storyline, so we really can't tell.
So who's the antagonist, please?
Apparently the mother.
Mother.
Apparently, so you know, we really can't tell if he was of age. But definitely the fact that I went there to school, you get the feeling that he's still under his parents' tutelage and care and all of that. What you should understand as well is, as much as the environment has a role to play, the fact that he's going to get married by, I think, January in church and all of that, does not necessarily mean he has moved or changed from that stance of atheism to religious belief. Now, again, from the story, it's just a short brief of probably 2 lines, but from the story, there's also the question of, it wasn't about the faith, it was about atheism. It was an attack on atheism, not a particular faith. Because oftentimes in various religions, now the prominent ones, if an individual moves from A to B, there's always the talk of, oh, thank God.
Thumbs up.
For example, if a Muslim converts to a Christian, you hear things like, oh, thank God, Jesus saved the soul and all of that. If a Christian converts to Muslim, alhamdulillah, that he has found faith. So now, the fact that the boy is an atheist or decides to be an atheist is where the problem lies, not necessarily the change of religious belief from one faith to another, in terms of the prominent ones I said, Christianity to and Islam. Now we need to understand that the fact that the boy is also going to have his church wedding by January does not necessarily mean he has changed the stance. If we were to just deviate a bit, we have folks who, just for to suit societal dictates and meet up with societal expectations, got married and even had a child or two, yet they're closeted homosexuals. Marriage didn't change them. Some of them even had their marriages in church. It didn't change them. Moreover, these whole talks of probably homosexuality or atheism and all of that didn't start with our generation. It didn't start 20-30 years ago. The fact that it is more pronounced now does not necessarily mean it just took place 20-30 years ago. During the whole sexual molestation scandal with the Catholic Church and all of that, there were researches and studies that found out that even as at the 1800s, 1890s, you had some reverend fathers molest seminary boys and all of that. That in itself, you want to look at it from the angle of homosexuality. But if you dig down, you'll probably look at it from the aspect of pedophilia. There were pedophiles because most of those seminary boys were also young. They were not of age. So the issue of homosexuality or atheism and all of that has been from time memorial. Some of us, our forefathers, probably were even closeted gays, but due to societal expectations and dictates, they couldn't come out to own their sexuality. So they just needed to, let's have a front, a cover, a child or two, and that's it.
Oh yes, something. Let's just look at the let's look at the African style of parenting. Does it really work? Because I know people would say it has helped shape people into having moral or upholding moral standards. Well, the same children you think are upholding moral standards, once they're out of your house, you're like, I'll narrate the shots.
Even within the house.
I'll narrate the shots. So back then in University of Port Harcourt, I had this, I wouldn't want to call her a friend with all due respect, but I think friendship is a name that you should...
An acquaintance.
Yeah, an acquaintance. I just knew her, and then of course. So somehow I was around her vicinity one of the times when and she just got a call that her mom, was it her mom or someone, was coming to, was on the way to house and school.
And then there was a transformation.
Oh my goodness. In split seconds, I saw a young girl who had all the lashes, and then you had to, then wigs were not so, you had to fix your hair. She losing everything, took the lashes, still biting the nails, like, you will enjoy yourself. And in split seconds, she had to, at fast, taking the television in her house, the home theater, to her friend, her neighbor's house. So I'm like, okay, because mommy is coming. Mommy does not even know. Now, apparently, her parents are Deeper Life members.
Oh,
All due respect to that church.
Sure.
Yeah.
But her parents are Deeper Life members. And they didn't know that their child in school
Had
was
an identity.
someone
Had
else.
another
And in their head, so
identity.
in their head, I'm training up a child that loves the Lord. Oh my goodness.
And that doesn't mean she doesn't love the Lord,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, but then that's what they are thinking. Because you know, where you dress in a certain way, you say that you don't love the Lord. So, and they're thinking, my child will never wear earrings, she'll never wear makeup, she'll never fix her hair, it has to be natural hair. But then this child has come to school and she wants to be someone else. So really, in the parents' mind, they're thinking, good job done. That, I don't know if you understand what I mean.
Should I call
Okay,
in here?
come in.
I feel that as parents, we can only do so much. That's just the truth. We can only do so much. Like I
As much
said,
as we can.
yes, because it's my desire. I said it before I got married. I prayed. My husband and I, we fasted. I'm not joking. We fasted. We prayed. This is what we want. This is the kind of children we want to have. But even at that,
There's a slight already.
but even at that, I pray that my children will grow up the way I want them to. But if it happens that somehow they choose some other orientation, I can't. The highest I can do is to pray for them and hope that they change. Because I have to understand that my part is to pray, to instruct in the way of the Lord, to groom you up to a certain level. After a while, you're supposed to be an independent individual. So at that point, I can't lord anything over you. I can't force you to do anything. The highest I can do at some point, at that point, is to pray for you and believe that my God answers prayer. And because he answers prayer, he's going to change you for me.
Okay.
I will not. No, that's that. I mean, I can only do so much as a parent.
There's so much, parents can do in terms of tutelage. I mean, if you go by the Judeo-Christian faith, train up a child the way he should go. When he grows up, he won't depart from it.
Yes.
Beautiful. You want to train a child that way. But there's also, as I said earlier, a point wherein the child also has to reinvent himself or herself, training himself or herself, developing and all of that. When it gets to that point where the child is probably out of your, vicinity, there's little you can do because the child is an adult, and there's little you can do to probably try and shape and reshape and remodel. So you just, as she said, trust God, keep praying and hoping that there's probably some sort of twist so that the child continues on that path. Now, again, we should understand that the psychosocial realities of different times, differs. The things that were obtainable 30, 40 years ago during, the youth of our parents is not what's obtainable now. It does not necessarily mean that the core of it isn't obtainable, but the shape and, modes and forms it now has differs. So you cannot expect that the same thing that worked 40 years ago will work now. Some 20, 30, 40 years ago, it was probably okay for women to, be housewives and, just choose that kind of a lifestyle and expect that. But now, women know that there's so much more, there's so much more to them, and they need to also have a career for themselves and all of that. So, in that sense alone, this is just even an illustration. You realize that the reality would differ between the wife of, 40 years ago and the wife of the 21st century.
Like, just to continue there now, let's look at the fact that the kind of before punishment, now for parents who think they can punish you and who think they can for you to be a good child, you have to go through some kind of punishment. And sometimes your parents will just ask you questions. Imagine an adult like me. My dad would just ask me, do you, for instance, I'm taking an example now.
Yeah.
Why is it
I know.
I know.
That's because you've been ideologically conditioned to think so.
Are you sexually active? For instance, are you sexually active? And as an adult, so a part of the child, when you go to a certain extent, you want to keep some side of things to yourself. So I traveled recently, and my dad sat me down and asked me, what he was even saying. I'm really close with my dad anyway, and he said, what of your love life? Is there any person in your life now? And he knows I don't like talking about it. But when he said that, he now said, I know you may not want to talk about it because he knows I do not like, but I'll still ask you.
Reverse psychology.
I said, there's nobody here right now. And after saying, in terms, all those questions.
Yeah.
Some people, some children or young adults who want to be smooth, they become more secretive, and some parents want to force themselves into their personal life. So, do you think that's really right?
Well, that would also depend, really. She mentioned at the beginning of this segment, talking about the tiger mom, which is the Asian parenting style. That's a strict parenting style.
Yes.
It's quite forceful. And when you look at the African setup, that's probably what we have. In terms of, unlike the French parenting style, which is more of a, an emotional connection with your child and being there for the child emotionally and all of that. When you look at the way we were brought up, especially within the African setup, majority of us were brought up with that tiger mom kind of parenting. It was forceful. Sunday, you dare say you don't want to go to church, or Friday, you don't want to go to the mosque. That kind of a thing. You
can't even say you want to eat something else.
You barely had a say. You barely had a say, and that probably shaped some individuals to be secretive because they never had a voice in the first place. So they were all, isolated, locked up. They were all just within. Now, when you now have such folks sniff, a breath of freedom and decide to exploit, you now want to restrict them at their age. It's not possible. So such, individuals will probably be restrictive of any kind of change that decides to, affect that freedom that they think they've been able to achieve. So overall, what you'd find out is that for, the African style of parenting, oftentimes parents growing up, very few parents give children the voice or opportunity to express themselves. It was always what the parents wanted, either in terms of religious, practice, or even in terms of, things, career choices. For some of us, you must be a lawyer, you must, So it was restrictive, it was strict, quite all right. But you really can't fault the parents either. That was how best they knew they could train a child, and that's what they followed. But now, as I said, psychosocial realities.
There's a twist.
There's a twist because experiential realities are changing.
Shifts.
So you really can't fault them. They did the best they could. Was it good enough? Well, it now depends on how the individual is able to cherish the effort. But I think you have to give them kudos for the little they did.
That's it.
Thank you so much. Perpetual, I'm sure you will not leave your head and
exactly.
I agree to almost everything he's saying. Sure. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your thoughts. I think you'll make a good parent, maybe. Yeah. Do you think so?
Thank you.
You hope so, right? He's smiling. I should not be that kind of fire. I'll ask you to
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. He's big on freedom.
Liberal.
He's big on that. Yes,
liberal.
he is.
I'll be
and that's what I don't like about him. I don't like when you're extremely liberal. I like when you allow people to choose, but I don't like when you're just
extreme. Maybe
no, I don't like it.
All right. Okay, something, please. All right. Thank you so much, something.